Hold on. Hmm. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cheyenne's Forum. Today is September 3rd. Hi, Tom. Nice to see you.
How are you? Nice to see you.
Yeah, so glad you come back. Yeah, Tom, this is 2 weeks after our last interview, right?
Right.
Yeah. So nice to see you again. Yes,
Thank you.
we have so many things happen during your vacation time. So we
No
can talk.
matter, yeah, and no matter when I go anywhere, something happens. It's like every time. And
Just
then even if I'm not going somewhere and something happens, you don't notice when I'm here, but you especially notice when I'm not here. And last week, I'm sorry I couldn't join you. It's one of the first times I've traveled all over the world since
uh-huh.
we started doing these and joined you from many different continents, in fact. And for some reason, this time, I because of the way the tours were set up and the meetings were set up, I didn't have free time in the evening. By the time we added 9 hours to your time, um, I couldn't make it work out. So sorry I missed you last week.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm actually really glad for you. You finally have some time for yourself. That's good. And you need it, like recharging. Thank you so much. And then we there are so many things we can talk about today. But first, I really like to hear something from your trip, your Europe trip, and also something related to Europe, what happened during your vacation time. And also, something really seriously happened here in our homeland. So the first thing first, something happened in Europe, in France. France actually arrested the founder of Telegram, and he's still in France right now. And they charge him about 4 or 5, like criminals. That's the first thing happened, and everyone is really surprised, and especially the way they arrest him. That's the first thing. And the second thing is we know that Brew actually issue a ban to X. So X right now is stop running at Brazil because of the speech, like freedom of speech. So the whole thing, you look, and then you have it's easy for you to get a conclusion that the pressure, the stressful, or the destroy of the freedom of speech is not only happening in US, not only happening in Canada, not only happen in England, it's all over the world. So what is going on here?
Well, what's going on in the first place is the United States is the only country that has a Bill of Rights. We're the only country that our First Amendment says the government cannot stifle your speech or restrict freedom of assembly or your religious, how you worship. That
Mhm.
these are rights nobody else has. So
Mhm.
whether you go to Canada or you go to the United Kingdom or Europe or any of these countries, nobody else has that. Nobody else has that as a guarantee in their fundamental government documents, which is our Constitution. And you
Mhm.
go through. So when the founding fathers were debating 250 years ago of having the Constitution, the first Constitution was a confederation. It wasn't the federal Constitution we have now. And what
Mhm.
happened is that states were charging other states taxes and tariffs, and you had no ability to raise an army or to raise taxes or to raise money. And so the founding fathers they saw that that was a failed document, the Articles of Confederation.
Mhm.
So they went back to the drawing board, back to Philadelphia, back to sitting down and drawing up a new constitution. And in this one, many of the founding fathers, um, they wrote documents and letters to each other and in newspapers posted their theories of what the new government should look like and how strong it should be.
Mhm.
Now, this is just coming off the war with England to
Mhm.
gain freedom. So
Mhm.
nobody wanted to have a strong federal government because they were afraid of tyranny. being imposed on them by the government. So
Mhm.
the only way that the states could ratify and get each other to adopt the new Constitution was to include the first 10 amendments, which became known as the Bill of Rights. Now, what separates the Bill of Rights from other bills, other amendments, is that it's all the restrictions of what the government cannot do to you. It cannot take away your freedom of speech. It cannot prevent you from having an assembly, cannot restrict you from the way you worship, cannot take away your guns. That's the Second Amendment. It cannot illegally search your house or illegal search, arrest, all those kind of things. The Eighth Amendment, which a lot of people don't realize, you heard that recently when the one judge, tried to fine Trump, what, $1 billion or something. That's the Eighth Amendment. Unreasonable sentence. That the
Right.
sentence doesn't match the crime. So that's what happened. Now, the only addition to that was after the Civil War, the 14th Amendment was added. The 14th Amendment basically says the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, apply to you no matter what. It's not just a restriction on the federal government, all government. So the states can't hurt you either. They refer to it as the due process clause, that you're entitled to due process. You're entitled to have the evidence show what you did that violated the law and what laws you violated. So that's all built into our Constitution. Nobody else in the world has that. Nobody, not even our closest allies. So you see restrictions on speech, you see censorship in Canada, and a lot of people referring to Trudeau as a little, communist himself. He loves Mao, loves the CCP's form of government in China, and he said so. He wishes he had that power. Well, he exercises a lot of power
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
close to that.
Mhm.
Now you see it in England, you see it in France, you see where the governments or the citizens, I mean, are becoming fed up with the extreme liberalism,
Mhm.
all the woke stuff. And then it's the liberals and the progressives that are restricting the rights of citizens, that
Right.
they're imposing censorship, imposing um, draconian laws, which are very strict against the people, which the people thought, oh no, we're not going to see that kind of tyranny. Well, they're seeing it
Mhm.
and they don't
Mhm.
like it. So, but still, it proves they're not the United States. It
Right.
proves why millions of people want to come to the United States, whether it's legal or illegal, they want to come here. Because they
Mhm.
think once they're inside the borders here, they're going to be protected by our Constitution. And they're right, they will be. Even illegals
Right.
are allowed to be protected under our Constitution.
Right. Right. So that's why people said American is the last hope of the continent
And
of
it is. It was
Earth.
actually the first hope. Now
Yeah.
it's the last hope.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right. First and the last hope.
And it's the longest lasting constitutional government
Mm-hmm.
in the world. 250 years,
Mm-hmm.
and the mechanisms are in place to have amendments to the Constitution, to change the Constitution, not easily, but they're there that can be used, like
Mm-hmm.
when the 14th Amendment, like the amendments that gave women the rights to vote, different amendments that have been passed
Right.
uh, can change the Constitution, but they're not real easy. The founders did not want them to be subject to whim on the part of Congress or on the part of the states.
Right.
So that's why it's hard to change the Constitution, but not impossible. And it
Mm-hmm.
should be an important issue before that happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for the history lesson, which is really important to reassure that American is the American. American is so special.
And some of
And
the things that aren't even listed in the Constitution became a matter of practice after a while. For example, there was nothing, there is now, but there was nothing originally preventing someone to run for president over and over and over. It wasn't restricted to 2 terms.
Mhm.
And so at the time, George Washington, when he became our first president, and then
Mhm.
easily was reelected 4 years later. So now he's been president almost 8 years,
Mhm.
and he decides on his own, that's enough. Time
Mhm.
to leave, time to let somebody else be the president.
Mhm.
When the King of England heard that, he knew that the American government was something very special, that the fact that George Washington did that, in his mind, guaranteed the success of America in the long run. Now, later, during World War II, President Roosevelt ran and was reelected several more times. I think a
Mhm.
total of four. And he died
Right.
in his last term. He died from having a heart attack or something when he was in Georgia. But in any event, after that is when the restrictions went on that, two terms, or it can be even a little more than two, if somebody finishes the term of a president. For example, when John F. Kennedy was killed,
Mhm.
Lyndon Johnson becomes president. He was the vice president.
Mhm.
Now, Kennedy was in the second half of his first term. So
Mhm.
Johnson comes in and finishes that term,
Right.
and it's less than 2 years. So
Mhm.
Johnson then could run two more times. He could
Right.
be president for 12 years.
Mhm.
Now, in 1968, he decided in March of 68
Mhm.
that the whole country had turned against him because the Vietnam War was so unpopular. And
Mhm.
he made up his mind, that's it. He's not going to run for reelection, but he could have. So he
Mhm.
could have been president 12 years, even
Mhm.
with the newer restrictions that came out after Roosevelt had been elected to all those terms.
Mhm. Right. Right. Wow. So people just wonder, especially the conservative people just wonder for this election 2024, if we lost, maybe we will lost the Constitution, lost this country. What do you think about that?
That's very possible because the Biden administration comes into power and immediately demonstrates disrespect for the rules and the Constitution,
Right, right.
disrespect for decisions of the Supreme Court.
Hmm.
So that's when they started issuing policies of censorship,
Hmm.
restricting freedom of speech,
Hmm.
arresting people that they don't like what they've said,
Hmm.
um, those kind of policies
Hmm.
that really throw the Constitution out. Now, the Constitution has also created our system of government of three co-equal branches
Hmm.
that are supposed to respect each other. So you
Right.
have the executive branch, which is the president
Hmm.
and the cabinet, his people that he's put in power.
Hmm.
The legislative branch, which is Congress, and the judicial branch, which is
Hmm.
the court system, up to and including the Supreme Court.
Hmm.
Now, Biden, you remember in the last couple of years,
Hmm.
several times has said students don't have to pay their loans back.
Right.
He has no authority to do that. The
Hmm.
case went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, you have no authority to do that.
Hmm.
And Biden basically said, too bad, I'm doing it.
Hmm.
So, creating a minor constitutional crisis because it didn't affect enough people. But that's the type of thing that decisions by the Supreme Court are supposed to be followed. They're supposed to be that's considered sacred in our system.
Right.
And that's where the contest comes up then. Who can make laws?
Hmm.
Congress, yes. Supreme Court, depending the way they decide, they're not supposed to make law, but they're supposed to interpret it and enforce it.
Right.
And then the executive branch is supposed to carry out
Hmm.
the laws of the judicial branch, I mean, the legislative branch, or the decisions of the judicial branch. And
Right.
the Biden administration has shown that doesn't matter to them. They're going to do what they want.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, so this
That's
is.
very dangerous. When people talk about the next election in a couple of months and the
Hmm.
damage that can be done, what
Hmm.
they're looking at is that up until recently, when it was going to be Biden and Kamala Harris running together again before Biden dropped out,
Hmm.
Biden was still going to be the president. And
Hmm.
everybody has thought correctly that
Hmm.
he's an extremist. He's
Hmm.
become very much of a strong socialist, if not worse,
Hmm.
but he was still going to be the president. Then he drops out, hands over basically the nomination to Kamala Harris,
Hmm.
and she is way beyond Biden. She's trying to walk things back to, oh no, no, I'm not against fracking.
Yeah.
I'll all of this. Well, she is against it. I'm not against such and such. She is against it. So all of these various things demonstrates that she is a Marxist, not
Right.
just a little bit progressive or a little bit socialist. She is a full bore Marxist.
Exactly.
And that's what's coming. And if and what happens a lot of times, almost every time, is
Mhm.
during a campaign, a candidate will say, I'm for this, I'm for that. And then when they try to show themselves as being more moderate,
Mhm.
like Joe Biden. I'm Lunch Pail Joe from
Yeah.
Scranton, Ohio. I take my lunch to work in Congress with all this nonsense. And then he comes in and he's much more of a socialist than he pretended to be.
Mhm.
So usually candidates will be far left, far right, and move to the center after they're elected.
Mhm.
But in the case of Biden, he stayed with all the pressure from the squad and the other extremely left-wing socialists in the Democratic Party now.
Mhm.
He moved further to the left.
Mhm.
Kamala Harris is way beyond that.
Yeah,
Now,
she is.
the advantage that she has that might help her get elected is the apathy of the American public and the out and out stupidity of the voters. They don't listen to her. They don't know what she stands for. They
Mhm.
don't want to know. She doesn't want them to know. She avoids the questions. Good example, a couple of days ago, the reporters are yelling questions and she's got earbuds, in her ears, the little white
There, yeah.
earpieces. Oh,
Hmm.
I can't hear you. She's halfway up the stairs of the plane
Hmm.
and she's on the cell phone. Oh,
Hmm.
wait a minute. I thought you had earbuds and couldn't hear. And if you had earbuds, they can connect to your phone, so you wouldn't need to have the phone in your hand. So
Hmm.
right away, she's created a false impression that she cannot answer questions, which
She's.
actually was, I don't want to. I don't want to answer any questions from you, and I'm not going to unless I have to.
Hmm. Hmm.
So so she is so phony
Hmm.
and so dangerous because of that, with her
Hmm.
cackle, laugh, ha ha ha, everything's a joke. It's not a joke. She has
Hmm.
no respect for the Constitution, and she has proved that over and over.
Hmm.
And she's talked about all the time. I was with Joe. I was the last person in the room with the president. His policies were my policies. Now she's trying to walk away from a lot of those policies. Well, she can't. That was their administration. And I like Trump's line when she says, I'm going to, seal the border day one in
Hmm.
my presidency. I'm going to do such and such. And Trump says, wait a minute. You were the partner of Joe Biden, and
Hmm.
your day one was 1,000 days ago. What happened then?
Right.
Why didn't you do this 3 years ago when you became vice president and president, the team, the exclusive team of Democrats? So she constantly lies. Now, what's happened is that the public, I think, has gotten to the point where any lie is okay. Biden has lied. And now what's interesting with Biden is because he's still president, what's
Hmm.
interesting with him is that the
He's in
people that
vacation right now. He
the
doesn't.
people that like Biden
Hmm.
attribute his lying to, well, now that he's getting older, he doesn't remember things, so he lies about them. So his uncle that crashed in a plane in World War II didn't crash in the ocean. According to Biden, he crashed in a jungle and was eaten by cannibals.
Hmm.
And the Defense Department comes out immediately and says, that's not true. He was in a plane that crashed in the ocean. He didn't crash in the jungle. He wasn't eaten by cannibals
Hmm.
unless the cannibals could swim 10 miles out to sea and eat them in the ocean. But in
Hmm.
any event, he's telling those lies, and people now are over and over and over. Same story, how many times? And the people say, well, that's because he's so old. Now he's getting old. Biden has been a liar since day one. When he first ran for president, how many years ago? He made up lies about his academic achievements,
Hmm.
about he quoted some guy falsely, copied a speech from England and
Hmm.
made that like it was his own speech.
Hmm.
Several other lies about his qualifications. And in the meantime, it was so bad that the newspapers in those days, when you didn't have a completely obedient press, they called him out on it. Back,
Hmm.
back, you remember when they used to give out Pinocchios,
Hmm.
that if you told a small lie, you got one Pinocchio. If you
Hmm.
told a big one, you got four or five.
Right.
He got four so many times, he dropped out of the presidential race because he had gotten caught lying so many times.
Hmm.
That's 30 years ago, more. So he's been a liar since day one. That's not a matter of age or
Hmm.
dementia. It's a matter of character. He
Exactly.
doesn't have the character. He's dishonest.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so is Kamala Harris. That part they have in common.
Mm-hmm.
very much, very dishonest, very deceiving, tell these lies, and then take advantage of a media
Right.
compliant in supporting these liars
Mm-hmm.
and not calling them out on it. And then a lazy public, lazy voters
Mm-hmm.
who, whatever they hear, that's good enough. So when you see and then lazy pollsters who make up these numbers or the way they conduct a poll.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, Kamala Harris just pulled ahead of Trump by 3 points, 50 to 40, whatever it is. And many other legitimate pollsters are saying that's not true. It's
Mm-hmm.
dishonest how they conduct their polls. So you
Mm-hmm.
have pollsters like Rasmussen, who
Mm-hmm.
have a very good reputation, who can explain how all these other polls are
Mm-hmm.
conducted in a manner to give false information.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's where the problem comes in, is that you have a misinformed public,
Right.
a public that doesn't want to be informed
Mm-hmm.
beyond that.
That's the problem. That's the key problem. Thank you, Tom, for mentioning that. When the more you study the situation, the more you will think that there are, as we are as a voter, we have our obligation to understand these candidates. This is our job to find out the truth about the candidates.
But the truth is, the American public over the last several decades have gotten so spoiled that
Mm-hmm.
they don't even agree that they have a responsibility to learn the truth. Now, the founding fathers 250 years ago said that the system will last, the republic will last, but it depends on an honest. Sorry, I forgot to turn my phone down. The government will last, but it depends on a knowledgeable public. They have to do their homework, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't. So to me, when you see polls that show show Trump and Kamala almost even,
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's a sad state, because I wonder if you look at, Trump having 50% of the country, 50% of the voters say they support Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's already been president and had a magnificent term as president, the best economy, the best employment figures, the lowest inflation, the
Mm-hmm.
best growth, the safest, no new wars.
Mm-hmm.
All of the things that Trump did were excellent, were outstanding.
Right.
A tremendous, the old adage, were you better off 4 years ago today? There's no question everybody was better off 4 years ago. Minority groups, citizens, middle class, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have these polls come out and say Kamala Harris, sorry, Kamala, but you're a moron. For
Mm-hmm.
her to be in the polls as even with Trump and the same 10, 20 points of Trump is got to be either a complete lie or a
Mm-hmm.
completely stupid voters,
Mm-hmm.
or both.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what scares me,
Mm-hmm.
as a citizen, as a voter, as a patriot. It scares me that it would take so little for the public to ignore the facts and buy into her lies. And
Mm-hmm.
she hasn't even been in the situation. Now
Mm-hmm.
she's going to debate Trump. Well, we'll see what happens there.
So who
Trump
knows? She
Trump
tried.
did a terrible, but if she does a terrible thing, in
Mm-hmm.
the case of Biden, when he did a terrible debate, the Democratic Party said, there's our excuse to get rid of him. They
Mm-hmm.
knew he couldn't beat Trump. They knew it.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted Biden. They wanted an excuse to get rid of Biden. So the
Mm-hmm.
Democratic elite are
Mm-hmm.
the ones that pushed Biden to do a debate before the conventions. Never been
Right.
done. Normally,
Mm-hmm.
both parties select their nominee, and then late
Correct.
August into September, maybe October, they start having debates. And
Mm-hmm.
in this case, the Democratic elite, and Trump, he basically takes with confidence, I'll debate anybody, anytime, whatever. I don't care. Which, because he's going to have the same policy statements. He's not going to worry about being tripped up lying or any of that. But
Mm-hmm.
in Biden's case, the Obamas and the rest of the elite in the Democratic Party that are running that party to this day,
Mm-hmm.
they knew that Biden could not stand up against Trump.
Right.
They knew he would be severely
Mm-hmm.
defeated in a debate. And
Mm-hmm.
that would be the excuse they needed to get him out in time to have a new nominee before the convention. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when they anointed Kamala Harris. We blessed you. You are the Democratic nominee for presidency. And
Mm-hmm.
Biden, go to the beach, go do something else. You're out.
Right. So Democrats have no Democrat at all. So they are just a few people game. It's just like Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Schumer, Clinton. That's all they're in power. So some people, it's just a little question. Some people just wonder, why Trump agreed to debate with Biden before the convention.
Because he had the confidence that he could beat Biden or anybody else anytime.
Mm-hmm.
And that with the attention he would get and the coaching that he got, which is interesting, Trump, friends of mine said they were disappointed. Trump should have attacked Biden here and he should have attacked Biden there. And Trump's strategy to me was clear. Be a
Mm-hmm.
gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be a bully.
Mm-hmm.
Just let, the old expression, give him enough rope and he'll hang himself.
Mm-hmm.
Let Biden have as much time up to
Mm-hmm.
the 2 minutes that he got. He kept quitting after about a minute. And the moderators kept saying, Mr. President, you still have another minute. And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, oh, I can't think 2 minutes.
Right.
Only think for 1 minute,
Yeah,
if that. So, so in any event, that's basically why Trump, I think, knew
Mhm,
that Biden was going to just fold, that he was going to do a terrible job. Now, I don't know if Trump knew that the Democrats would take that so far as to commit a coup
mhm,
and undermine 15 million primary voters that voted for Biden. But in any event, Trump, with his answers, with logic, calmness, he didn't come off as the bully and
mhm,
the bad guy and all of that. He said, "Here, Joe, keep talking. You're doing a great job." And the
mhm,
moderators too. Mr. President, you have more time. Keep talking. And the more he talked, the worse it got.
right.
So that's why the Democratic elite knew, and
Mhm,
they know how good Trump is as well. They won't admit it, but they knew that what would happen would be terrible for Biden
mhm,
and great for them to have an excuse to dump him. He
mhm,
can't win.
mhm,
Well, when you have primaries that select your candidate, that's
mhm,
already being decided all during that. And
mhm,
then with Kamala not having to compete in
mhm,
any primary,
right.
she doesn't expose herself as the complete moron she is.
Mhm,
So that's what happened. She cackles her way into being nominated. And
mhm,
now what she puts out there, and then, she picks a even more of a Marxist, if that's possible, in
right.
picking her vice president, the governor of Minnesota.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. This guy
Mhm,
is an absolute Marxist, an absolute follower of Mao.
mhm,
Like the apostles that followed Jesus, this guy followed Mao.
right.
Every time he went to China, 30 trips, he went to every store he could to find little red books
Mhm,
that he could
mhm,
hand out to friends. Here, look what Mao wrote. Look how smart he is.
right.
So, and then he's vulnerable because in 2020, when you had the peaceful riot, his city, Minneapolis, took the worst rioting almost of anybody.
Mhm,
And in that situation, he waited over 3 days to call in the National Guard, to stop the rioting. In the
mhm,
meantime, they burned down a police station, took over libraries, took over courthouses, took over private businesses, attacked police officers, did billions of dollars in damage.
mhm,
He did nothing to stop it because, that's, you look at the tandem. Number
mhm,
one, number two. Number one is Waltz, the Minneapolis governor at the time,
mhm,
Minnesota governor at the time. And
mhm,
then, so he's basically allowing the rioting to continue.
mhm,
Then Kamala steps up and says, you know what? I'm going to create a fund to bail out the rioters so they don't have to go to jail. They don't have to be prosecuted. I'm on their side. And this is going to continue. So this is, the number one and the number two riot, and we'll find a way to let you get away with it. And
right.
they did.
Mhm,
So that's her true policies.
right.
But to undermine the government, that's okay with her.
Mhm. Yeah. So it's so obvious to most of us that Kamala Harris is nothing to do with the Democrats. He is a Marxism. She's a Marxism. and also her running mate is even Marxist era person.
Now,
So
that makes you wonder, does
yeah,
that make the Democratic Party a Marxist party?
of
I,
course.
exactly.
Of,
Exactly. It's Marxism.
yeah,
You know,
I
you
just
had Trump
mhm.
4 years ago. Trump said this at his rallies, this nation will never go socialist, never be a socialist country. Too late. It's already a socialist country. How far beyond that is it going to be?
Right. So that's very serious thing. And this is so sad to see that what happened in front of our eyes. And then also people, there are so many people knows, there are so many people don't know about how serious it can be. So I just wonder the next question is, if I say if I don't want that happen, if Kamala Harris has become the president, so we can imagine, easily imagine how American will will be, where American will go to. It's
Right.
not a traditional American anymore. It's that. It's going to have a reborn of a Marxism country.
Yeah.
So then I think more and more people will realize at that time, we got a wrong person to be in the White House. Okay, so they
You know,
probably,
why don't they realize that now with Biden?
I
And she's
know,
been at his side for the last 3.5 years.
right,
That should already be an education. Gee, we elected an idiot to be president who's dishonest, has no character. He's a
right,
socialist, he's a leftist. You know,
right,
he plays to the crowd, whatever they want to hear.
right.
And we elected him, and it's been a disaster. People will say it's the worst presidency in history.
Mhm,
And people like Jimmy Carter are
mhm,
going to be happy because now they're not rated the worst president. They're second from the worst, thanks to Biden.
mhm,
So people should already know if we made this mistake once, three and
mhm.
a half years ago, are we going to do it again with a clone of Biden that's even worse?
No,
Shouldn't
even
even say
worse.
clone. She's worse. She's
Mhm,
more of a Marxist, more socialist, more progressive. And even Biden is not the smartest guy. And he wasn't in his prime. He
mhm,
wasn't the smartest guy in the Senate. Now you have the same thing with her. She voted how many times with Biden? She doesn't understand inflation. So she cast tie breaking votes in the Senate. As vice president, if the Senate's in a tie, you get to be the one that breaks the tie. She
mhm,
broke it in favor of a number of laws that absolutely increased inflation,
mhm,
absolutely hurt the economy.
mhm.
And she signed that bill. She's responsible. She can't
Right.
even blame that. Well, Biden did it when I was taking a nap or something. She
Mhm.
did.
So now question is, very, very serious question is to American people, to us is how we can fight with the Marxism leaders. This is our reality. If she got elected or if she got put in White House, how we can fight with this Marxism in our own soil. Never.
We have to have people um, come out strongly against it and why it's a terrible policy, why it failed. You know, Karl Marx wrote these things sitting in a London library, I think in the 1850s or 60s. So the attempt to turn America into a Marxist country really began in the early 1900s. This has been going on for 120 years.
Mhm,
A lot of people don't realize, by the way, that the FBI, which used to be the greatest law enforcement agency in the world, now I have questions. The FBI was formed to go against Marxists. Wasn't formed to chase gangsters. That happened 20 years or 10 or 15 years later. So in
mhm,
1908, when the Bureau of Investigation was formed
mhm,
and J. Edgar Hoover becomes the first director, it's to go after communists, Marxists who are trying to infiltrate the government and get elected. And
mhm,
many of them through rioting, through infiltrating labor organizations, the same
mhm,
things they try to do now, all of those things. That's why the FBI was formed. Now, later, when the gangster era started, John Dillinger and Babyface Nelson and all these guys are going all across the country, robbing banks, robbing stores, killing people.
that. Tom, when does that happen? It's
Really,
not,
in the late 20s and into the 30s.
okay.
So at that time, The FBI did not have the jurisdiction to go after them. And these guys, if they were being chased by the police and they
Mm-hmm.
were going from robbed a bank in Oklahoma and they're on their way to Texas, if they crossed the border, they were home free. The police couldn't go after them, couldn't
Mm-hmm.
cross the border to chase them. So the FBI was, and they just didn't have the firepower. You had gangsters with machine guns and,
Mm-hmm.
heavy equipment. So the FBI is formed, and then, or it was the Bureau of Investigation. It's transformed into the Federal Bureau of Investigation,
Mm-hmm.
and they're given the authority to carry guns. That's
Mm-hmm.
when you see the training in the firearm range with the machine guns and the tracer bullets and all of that. That started in an attempt to go after gangsters, to go after Dillinger, to go after Babyface Nelson, all of these other street criminals that were doing so much damage to the country. That's when the FBI really became the most famous because they
Mm-hmm.
were chasing real bad guys, real
Mm-hmm.
serious criminals.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much that's been the bread and butter all these years to go after serious things. Now, what's happened since then, the FBI went from a handful of investigative responsibilities. There's almost 500 federal laws that the FBI has primary jurisdiction to investigate. So, organized crime, terrorism, international terrorism, domestic terrorism, white collar crime,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things that are now primary jurisdiction of the FBI, even if another agency has jurisdiction. So if you look at Secret Service
Mm-hmm.
has counterfeiting and white collar crime,
Mm-hmm.
well, the FBI has that too.
Mm-hmm.
Drug enforcement, DEA, they have drug trafficking,
Mm-hmm.
sale of illegal drugs, and all of that. So is the FBI, same laws. So they
Mm-hmm.
both, all these other agencies have similar or same jurisdiction as the FBI for many different violations. Now, the FBI is absolutely number one. Organized crime, for example, terrorism, for example, that these are strictly everybody else is supposed to take the back seat to the FBI or join task forces that the FBI runs.
Mm-hmm.
So in my career, I ran 3 different organized crime task forces. So that's how that would go. We had police, we had Secret Service and IRS and other agencies
Mm-hmm.
join the task force, but the FBI would be the lead, would run it, be in
Right.
charge of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's the history of the Bureau.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a whole different story because they've gone woke since
Mm-hmm.
Comey, a little
Mm-hmm.
bit Mueller, and a lot Christopher Wray, you
Mm-hmm.
know, same thing.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, well, so the beginning of the establish of FBI is against the Marxism. That's
Yep.
very interesting history, and that's something that we need to remember today. So I just wonder, because you work in there for almost 30 years, so you know how they handle their jobs. So if like Marxism people is in the White House, which has never happened in this country. But if that happened, what can we do as a citizen? Or this is question number one. The second is, what do you think about FBI? Can FBI do anything, or they cannot do anything because the Marxism is their boss?
It's not that they cannot, it's that
Uh-huh.
currently they won't. So the policies that the FBI follows now, you see, perfect example is J6, the January 6th investigations going after people. Some of the, if you have somebody January 6th
Mhm.
that attempted to hurt a police officer, fine. He should get 10 years in prison, as far as I'm concerned. But if you have people that merely trespassed at the Capitol,
Mhm.
that should be, when they were in a specified area where it was legal to assemble and protest, they shouldn't be prosecuted.
Yeah.
And what happened with many of those defendants is
Mhm.
that when they were charged with different violations, the
Mhm.
government basically said, look, you can plead not guilty. You can spend tens of thousands of dollars on lawyer fees to prove your innocence, or you
Mhm.
can just plead guilty and take what we give you and you won't go broke. And some of
Mhm.
the people did that and got 10 years in prison.
Mhm.
So that's where the difference is that the FBI now is looking at that's their biggest investigation in history and all of these things, and up till now, the biggest investigations were like the Lockerbie Pan Am 103 investigation, where hundreds of people were killed by a terrorist act,
Mm.
or cases like that, that a lot of people died, and or 9/11, a lot of people died.
Right.
And the Timothy McVeigh investigation, I was in the FBI. I was not part of that investigation, but I
Mhm.
was in the bureau when that was going on.
Mhm.
And friends of mine that were part of the investigation were saying they were covering leads because McVeigh had been in the military and
Mhm.
he had been in every continent. They were
Right.
covering leads all over the world, thousands and thousands of leads in that case to gather the evidence to prosecute Timothy McVeigh and convict him and obtain the death penalty against him. So those
Mhm.
are the biggest investigations for good reason. Calling J6 the biggest investigation is not something I'd be bragging about.
Mm-mm. I see. I see. So, oh, that's the maybe the reality which we do not want to see that it's really happened after the election. So it's really depend on people, depend on us, depend on every voters in American who you vote for. And if you vote for Kamala Harris, and then definitely this country will go Marxism.
Yeah, and she'll probably find an attorney general
Mhm.
more Marxist than Merrick Garland. And
Right,
she'll have to find a new FBI director
right,
who, makes Chairman Mao look like a Republican.
right.
So I think that that's the problem, is that what we have now could get way worse. And I don't think most people are not affected every day by the criminal justice system. They're just not. So if
Mhm.
you're working on your farm in Nebraska and you don't have the FBI come to your door or your neighbor's door, you don't think anything of what's happening in other places in this. Doesn't affect you. You don't care.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think that people need to start realizing that if the government can do this to those people, they could do it
Right,
to you too. If they
right.
could do this with all these made up prosecutions against Trump, they can
Mhm.
do it to you as well.
Mhm.
So I think that's where the problem is, that most people are apathetic.
Yeah. From our experience that come from our Marxism country, that once the Marxism guy got into power, it's really hard to get rid of them. Maybe you need to have a war, or maybe it's even worse than a war. Once they get into the power, they will stick there. Do
Yeah,
whatever.
because then they create a corrupt system that you can't vote them out. They
Right.
control the election process. They control the campaigning process by censorship. People can only hear one side of every argument. So, once that happens, the rationale why we have a Second Amendment, the founders openly talked about it's to let the citizens have arms to prevent the government from becoming tyrannical like the British government was.
Right.
And it absolutely worked. For
Hmm.
250 years, it's worked.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
now, if the government becomes even more tyrannical, even more Marxist with a Kamala Harris as president, then there are about 300 million guns in circulation in the United States.
Mhm.
So you could still end up with war, civil
Right.
war.
Right.
And then what would happen? But the thing is that a lot of the people with those guns are military trained,
Hmm.
um, are capable of maybe a revolution. And you had Thomas Jefferson, in writing the Declaration of Independence,
Hmm.
basically says if the government becomes tyrannical, the people have a right to overthrow it.
Yeah.
That's in our basic documents.
Right.
So I think that's the difference, that we've already specified why we have a Second Amendment:
Hmm.
protect the
Hmm.
people from the government.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now it turns out it's also to protect the people from other people,
Hmm.
because the police aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. This whole defund the police, or
Right.
reduce the number of policemen, or let prosecutors that let everybody out of jail and don't even prosecute. So now you have a situation where, as a private citizen, you call the police may not even come. Or
Hmm.
if they come, it might be an hour from now. Well,
Right.
bad guys could kill 1,000 people in an hour. So
Mm-hmm.
that's no protection at all. So the idea is the police, if they're not going to be there to protect you,
Mm-hmm.
you're on your own.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Yeah.
on your own.
That's right. That's right. And you know that some illegal immigrants, again from Venezuela, they eviction the apartment at Colorado and also Chicago.
Yeah.
So when the Colorado thing happened, they called police. The police does not show up. And right now, I heard that about hundreds of the bikers they went to Colorado. They want to do something for these people, and it's just like what you said. If the government don't do their job, don't do their duty, and people have to protect yourself. It's your rights. And then thank you so much. It's so clear that tell people that what situation right now. And if the Marxism people in power, like Kamala Harris and his running mate team, and the country will definitely go to not a socialism country, but a Marxism country. It's
I think
as if,
we're already a socialist country.
yeah,
I think right now.
yeah, I agree.
Now there are degrees of it, from 0 to 100. And I think
Right.
we're about 60 or 70 right now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, we're
A
there.
hundred would be fully Marxist, fully communist.
Yeah, if people vote for Kamala Harris, or if they steal the election again and success, and we'll become a Marxism country, and then at that time, remember we have 2A, we have our gun, so that's the last thing that we can do, and also for the Kennedy Jr. I mean, he joined Trump team. So is that what you expect, or it is a surprise to you? And what do you think about the effect for the election?
The surprise to me was that he waited so long, too long, but he
Mm-hmm.
waited a long time. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that, it's hard for him to believe. It would be like you or me being told by somebody, well, you're not an American.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of Bobby Kennedy, you're not a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in his blood. His uncle, the president, being murdered, his father, a senator,
Mm-hmm.
candidate and about to be the president in 1968. He was the leader, front runner.
Mm-hmm.
So his father murdered. Um, here's a guy. He bleeds for the Democratic Party, true blue. And
Mm-hmm.
now the party turned on him, tried
Mm-hmm.
to ban him from being on ballots, banned
Mm-hmm.
him from participating in the debates, even though he qualified. All of the things that they did to him, I think he finally reached the point of no return that
Mm-hmm.
when the Democrats anointed Kamala as the nominee,
Mm-hmm.
that was the final straw. And I think that's why when you hear Bobby Kennedy speak, his motivation is clear right now.
Mm-hmm.
He's not so much that he's going to do everything he can for Trump to be elected. He's doing that because he wants to do everything he can to keep Kamala from being elected.
Okay.
And he
Right.
has said that in no uncertain terms. We cannot let her become president. And if
Mm-hmm.
that means teaming up with Trump, because he doesn't agree with Trump on 100% of Trump's policies, who does? But
Mm-hmm.
enough, and disagrees with Kamala on enough that she can't be president as far as he's concerned. She is dangerous to the country.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I saw a poll that said 66% voter for the John F. Kennedy Jr. They will vote for Trump, which is a good news. What do you think? Do
I
you
think very, yeah.
should right? Almost 70% will vote for Trump.
Now, what he has also said is that he was going to try to take his name off the ballots
Yeah.
in states that Trump wasn't really competing in, like California, like some of the other ones. And
Mhm.
apparently, he found out that's not so easy to do.
They
So he
don't.
may still be on those ballots, but
Mhm.
it won't hurt Trump in those states.
Mm, 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 mm.
So whether he's on the ballot or not in California won't matter, but
Mhm.
it will matter.
Mhm.
Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
Michigan, Wisconsin,
Mhm.
Georgia, some of those states, it's going to make a huge difference. And a couple of points may make all the difference in
Mhm.
preventing Kamala from being the president.
Right, right. And he's in the fight with, I think, in Michigan, Wisconsin, because they keep his name on the ballot, even though he asked him for to take off the name, but they just keep the name. So I don't know if he can do anything, or he didn't think it through before he make the decision.
Now, even if he's still on the ballot, he can campaign and tell people, don't waste your vote on me.
Mm-hmm.
Vote for Trump,
Mm-hmm.
period. And
We can,
hopefully that'll work. We'll see. We'll see
right,
how much attention he'll get from his own voters, his own base
right,
about that issue. But
right.
one of the things that'll be interesting to me is that, and maybe it's just wishful thinking, and I had a dream in the middle of the night, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if Trump so severely defeats Kamala in their debate
Mm-hmm.
that now the Democrat elites go, how can we get rid of her? But you
I
know
like.
what happened in 1972?
Mm-hmm.
McGovern was the Democratic nominee for president.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up being the most severely defeated candidate in history. I think 49 of the 50 states voted for Republican.
Mm-hmm.
Next, and
Mm-hmm.
so what happened is that the Democratic Party realized that the elites didn't have enough power. They couldn't. George McGovern was the populist candidate, like Bernie Sanders. See, now a populist candidate like Bernie comes along. Well, they have 10 different ways to cheat and kick him out, which they did
Right.
several times.
Mm-hmm.
But in 1972, they couldn't do it. McGovern becomes the most popular young candidate. All the Democrats wanted him to be the nominee. So
Mm-hmm.
his people take over the Democratic convention. He becomes the nominee.
Mm-hmm.
When he gets so severely beaten, the
Mm-hmm.
Democratic elite, they come up with this new thing, super delegate.
Mm-hmm.
So what they say is that you shouldn't, if you've never been a key figure in the Democratic Party, you
Mm-hmm.
should not be able to go to the convention and with all your friends defeat people that have worked for years as loyal Democrats.
Really?
So the idea is if you started out as the dog catcher in your town,
Mm-hmm.
then you became the mayor, then
Mm-hmm.
maybe the governor, then maybe a congressman.
Step
You
by
spent
step.
all these years, 20 years, and now you're a senior elite member of the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
You should have more power than some young kid just out of college that decides to come in and vote for somebody because they're a liberal and he likes them. So that's where they declared that there will be so many super delegates. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how Hillary got to be the nominee later, is
Mm-hmm.
that all the super delegates wanted the party elite to be the dominant voice in selecting who the candidate's going to be. You just
Mm-hmm.
have that now with Kamala.
Yeah.
The Biden, I mean, the Obamas and the Clintons and the Nancy Pelosi's and all of these Joaquin Jeffries, all of these people are
Mm-hmm.
super delegates. They're super Democrats. They have more power than you walking in off the street and getting to go to the convention and vote for
Mm-hmm.
somebody you want.
It,
And
it,
so
mm-hmm.
they did that so that they would never have another McGovern. They would never have another
Mm-hmm.
enormous defeat
Mm-hmm.
of their candidate because they wouldn't have a candidate get in because they were popular. They
Mm-hmm.
got in because they paid their dues in the party. They were
Mm-hmm.
loyal Democrats, more important than anything else.
It really seems to me, thank you so much, first of all, for explanation of the Democrats, the inside Democrats Party. It's a perfect example of how to build a kingdom, how to build a pyramid. So
Yeah.
this is not Democrat at all. Inside their structure, inside their party. So well, just wish more and more people will realize that if you want to stay, make Americans stay as America, don't vote for Kamala Harris. She's full of lies, and she is the worst thing is the Marxism, not communism, not the socialism, but Marxism, extreme Marxism, and
Right.
that's
And my hope is that what you're saying resonates with the people that we can't have this. Stop this from happening. That this is a disaster. It's an emergency. Wake
Right,
up,
right.
stop being complacent, stop, doing what you do,
Hmm.
and realize that what's happening in this country is severe and the danger to our system is severe.
Right, right, exactly. And then remember, once the Marxism people get into the power, they will never leave the power. You have
No.
no way to get rid of them. And they will bring this country to disaster, which is really happening right now. And if Kamala Harris is in power, it's only can be worse in
And
very,
at
very
that point, the only way to bring about change in the government is through violence. And that's what we don't want. We
right,
don't want the public to have to rise up and
right,
actually use the Second Amendment to
right,
go after the communists and the Marxists and the people that are bringing down this country.
right. Well, thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. And Tom, I saw some force. Uh, I don't know where the force come from, but these people are really for Kamala Harris, really for the policies. So I don't know if they are just don't understand, cannot see it, or they have some other people force them to do so. But
No, my guess is they're looking at what will be in it for them. How will they benefit?
nobody will be benefit at a Marxism country unless you're the top
Well,
people.
go back to Animal Farm. Who
Yeah,
benefits? You know, all the pigs are supposed to be equal, but some pigs are more equal.
they
So
want
these
to be some
people
people.
that are outspokenly in favor of Kamala Harris,
Hmm.
they think in their mind that when this goes into effect, they will be more equal than you or me or the rest of the public.
Hmm.
That's their thing. They will have more power than the average person.
I think 90% of them will not have more power.
Oh, they won't, but they're stupid enough to think they will.
Yeah,
That's the lie that they're buying into.
yeah. Thank you so much. It's a heavy topic, but this is a reality in front of us. And thank you for fighting for this country.
Well,
And
thank you too. I mean, you should have 500,000 viewers to start with, getting up to 1 million. And it's a shame to me when I see some of these other podcasts that are just so nonsensical.
Mhm.
Uh, I wish we had a bigger audience. I wish
Yeah.
you had a bigger audience to be able to say that because you have the experience of what it's like to be in the wrong system, to be
Mm,
in a bad system.
right.
I don't. I should be just your typical spoiled American. I
You
grew
are
up
smart
I
enough to.
grew up in the suburbs outside Chicago, had a great life, you
Mhm,
know, went to school, played in sports, all of that. I became a police officer,
mhm,
6.5 years. Then I became an FBI agent, 29 and a half years. So I've had a great life, a great family, a great growing up period in a safe environment.
yeah,
All the things that Trump says at the end of his rally, make America safe again and strong again.
mhm,
Well, that's how I grew up when it was.
mhm,
So that resonates with me
mhm,
uh, because I grew up with that. And I'd like to see it come back. I'd like to see
mhm,
my children or grandchildren or friends' grandchildren grow up
mhm.
the way my friends and I had it in a
Right,
great,
right,
great system. And
right.
so, and I think we've gotten so spoiled. You mentioned I was in Poland last
Mm.
week.
Oh, you went to Poland.
Yeah. The whole trip was in Poland. So
Oh,
Warsaw, Gdansk, Krakow,
I,
Auschwitz, the
mm,
concentration camp,
mhm,
and learning the history even more closely from Poles, from the tour guides, that Poles, they had switched side. They were under Prussia. They were under Russia. They were under the, Austrian Empire. They were Germany. All of these switches and systems and all of that, and the way they were betrayed by their leaders and by Stalin in World War II and all of that and what they've been through. And now that they're basically free, they're in the EU, they're not under communism, they're not under that kind of regime, and they appreciate it. The people there and touring all of these cities, no sign of homeless out on the street, no
mhm,
sign of street criminals, no worry about that if you're out,
mhm,
in the main city at riding a subway at 11 o'clock at night or something, the way you would be afraid here to do it in a big city. And, it's so refreshing. And then, the people there, talking to me and saying, "Oh, you're in the United States. You have it made." See, that's why we're having 20 million people crash our borders,
Mm-hmm.
is because they think everything's perfect here from what they hear and believe. And they don't realize in many cases, they're almost leaving a better situation than they're arriving in. When
Mm-hmm.
they end up in Chicago or New York City or some of these other cities, uh, they just don't realize. And American people don't realize what we're losing in the
Right,
process.
right. Just like some saying is, smart people learn from history,
Well, the
not learn.
people in America learned in World War II, we were too far away for the Japanese to do a full scale invasion of the US or for the Nazis to do a full scale invasion. But now, in the days of nuclear war, they think we're safe. Oh, we've got these oceans to protect us. And they're so stupid, they don't realize the Russians have submarines that are so close to our coastline and hidden. They have stealth, which means secrecy. They're
Mhm.
hidden from view. We don't know they're there. And if they fire a nuclear missile at Washington, D.C., or at San Diego, California, that
Mhm.
missile will land in your city or my city in 8 minutes. So the ocean is no protection. It actually protects them because it keeps them hidden from
Mhm.
us.
Mhm.
So most people don't even think about that. Oh, no problem, no worries.
Mhm. Well, there is a saying in Chinese is you have to study every day, otherwise you're losing. That's true,
Yeah,
right?
could be.
But study the right thing, not the propaganda thing.
Right.
Well, thank you so much. I saw some people on our audience just leave a message, a lot of message, and then uh a Moo Choi said, "Thank you so much, Tom." And Tom, what do you think about Democrats want make a October surprise? What is the October surprise? And then they will have a movie that attack Trump. So don't know what the Trump team will deal with that.
Well, no doubt that, that people in Hollywood that love the Democratic Party, the money that they have is just enormous. So yeah, they can be making these propaganda films. I
Mhm.
mean, I equate the Democrats trying to do that, what Hitler did with, the movies that he had made that were propaganda. Hitler was the first world leader to take advantage of propaganda.
Mhm.
Joseph Goebbels,
Mhm.
because in those days, propaganda was not a bad word like it is now.
Mhm.
Joseph Goebbels became the director of propaganda for the Nazi Reich. And,
Mhm.
and they created these movies. They had movie makers making the triumph of the will, and some of these with showing the Nazi rallies in Nuremberg and thousands of people carrying torches, at night in the streets. And all of that was very effective. Take over radio. They didn't have television, but they had newspapers, movies, and radio, and
Mhm.
they took full advantage of it. It's the first regime in the history of the world that really understood propaganda, public
Mhm.
information being false information, but put it out and the people buying into it. And
Right.
here, that's the job of the Democratic Party and the people in Hollywood to support them. Come up with propaganda films
Mhm.
uh, supporting Biden and calling Trump a Nazi and calling Trump Hitler
Mhm.
and all these names, which are not true.
Mhm. Right. 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 I see someone just leave message and just delete it. I don't know. It's who delayed this messages. That's fine. Oh, right. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for the wonderful insights. And then this is really serious. Every time I talk with you, I just feel like, okay, we need to do something. We need to do something. Do
Yeah.
some more. Do some more. And we have less than 2 months for the to the election, right? So this
Right.
is our last peaceful fight for this country to keep as American, not fall into a Marxism country. So
Agree.
we need to and do something. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. And I wish you have a good week. And then, yeah, take a good rest. It's a long trip. It's a long
No, I'm
vacation.
fine. I'm fine. Doing this energizes me to be on the air with you
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'll see you next week.
next Monday.
All right, next Monday. Thank you.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you. Bye bye.
Sure. Bye bye.